Episode 24. Let's do a decal.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So last time we got this neck into its colour coat. It's going to have some clear coat over the back just to kind of seal everything in nicely. And it needs its decals applying to the headstock and quite a lot of clear putting on there. Now, I said in the last episode that I didn't understand what the back of the neck looked like. I haven't been able to find any images. I could guess and just have at it and clear off a load of the lacquer. However, I have been contacted by someone and I might have some images on the way. So I'm not going to go ahead with any relicking work just yet. I'm going to wait and see what comes up with those images. So the next bit I'm going to concentrate on is getting the decal on. Now, this decal has not been an easy job. It isn't something that's very straightforward. And also, I'm not copying the original. I'm kind of making it my own, which has made things a little bit more difficult. So I'll bring you in a little bit closer and I can show you what I've come up with. And basically, I've printed out on some inkjet water slide paper my version of this. And realistically, it could only really be one name, couldn't it? So it's not the Ventures anymore, it's the Adventures. And I've just changed the Mosrite name to my name because my guitars always have my name on, as I've said before. And I'm kind of near Nottingham, so that's what we've put. This has been a bit of a nightmare to do for a variety of reasons. There isn't a font that replicates the Ventures. That was hand drawn, I assume. So I've had to kind of trace this out in GIMP to get the shapes that I want, which was quite time consuming. It did take a little bit of time, but we got there with it. And essentially what I did is I used the pen tool to kind of make a selection around each letter and then just filled it with black. For the A and the D, I've kind of, you'll probably be able to see, I've just kind of taken the V, copied it, inverted it and turned it into an A, and the D is actually part of the R. I think that looks fine. I'm happy with that. I think it matches the original to a certain extent and I think it will work well on the guitar. It's then been printed off onto a sheet of water slide decal paper and I've just sealed it in with some clear acrylic lacquer just to seal the ink and stop it from running. And then it's just a case of really just cutting it out. I'm going to do them in two separate bits because they don't align perfectly as they've been printed out. And I always try and kind of cut these fairly close to the lettering and also kind of cut them in a way that there's not too many straight lines or sharp corners, and I find that that helps to hide the decal when you're lacquering over it. So basically that one will sit like that. And just do the same thing with this one. And that one's going to sit somewhere in there. I'm just going to check with my reference images exactly where they need to sit and we can start to put those in place. And from what I can see, that placement looks about right. So next up, I'm just going to plop them into a little bowl of water. Just give them a few seconds. Just to soak and soften up. And I always find it helps just to get a little bit of water onto the surface that you're applying them to. Start by chasing this one round with my inappropriate tool. Get that out of the way so you can see what's happening. And then it's just a case of sliding the backing paper off, getting it into position. And I'm laughing because I think that looks really, really good. Kind of get that in position too. You do have to be a little bit careful with these, but they're not actually that bad. They can stand a little bit of pulling around. Helps to have that little bit of water on there. But I actually really like that. I think that looks cracking. Let's move it down a little bit. On the original guitar, that big washer that's around the tuner kind of almost overhangs the decal. So just go with that. And I'm just going to remove as much of the moisture as I can. Just a little bit of paper towel. And we just need to leave this now for a little while to dry up. Now, sometimes what happens with these is as they dry, this paper will become a little bit kind of like cloudy and almost white. It's not a problem. That will just disappear as soon as we get some lacquer onto it. Right, come back when that's dried up. Okay, and I've left that for a little while and it feels nice and dry now. I'm not going to push too hard on it, but we look absolutely brilliant. So the next job is going to be getting some clear coat onto this. The manufacturers recommend that you use an acrylic clear coat to cover these up. Now I don't want to do that. I want to use nitrocellulose over this, but I've used it in the past on these, and the nitro straight onto them kind of sometimes crinkles them up a little bit, which is not what we want. So to that end, I'm just going to quickly kind of mask off the fretboard a little bit. Try not to be too slapdash with this. And I'm just going to put a couple of quite light coats of acrylic clear over that, just to seal it all in, let it dry up nicely, and then once that's happened, I can then go about kind of covering the whole thing with nitro and slowly but surely building it up until we can bury this little lip that's around the paper. So we'll just give that a quick spritz. And then I'm going to leave that for a few hours now, a good few hours, to dry up properly before I go anywhere near it with nitro, because the nitro could kind of damage that if it hasn't dried up sufficiently. So with that out of commission for a little while, we're going to need something to do to keep us occupied. And what I'd like to do is take another look at this pick guard, because whilst we've relicked this pickup and this knob, the rest of it is looking very much brand new and shiny, which is not at all what we want. So I'm going to start by stripping everything off here, and we can have a look and see what we need to do with it. And the problem as I see it is that Johnny's guitar, the actual pick guard, looks very flat and matte, and there doesn't seem to be any gloss left on it. However, I think the problem with that is it probably hasn't come about through kind of wear, it's just kind of age and almost oxidization that's caused it to become so flat. Might be that it's the environment that it's been used in for all those years. But because of that, I don't want to take an abrasive to it and just scratch it up, because I don't think that's really the look we're going for. And I'll get all this stuff off and we can kind of investigate further what I mean by that. It is also worth bearing in mind that that poker chip is far too nice and clean, and we need to do something with that too. I'll get the rest of this done off camera and I'll join you back when we're ready to investigate this further. And there we have the bits that I want to kind of do a little bit of work on. I'm going to put those to one side and we'll get onto those in a bit, but the main thing I want to attack is the pick guard itself. Now, you might have seen I was pulling little bits of the clear plastic off where I've already removed one layer, but these actually come with 2 layers. And this is a job I normally leave till last because it's kind of quite satisfying. And I see it as a kind of a finishing off point of the job, but we can't do that this time. And with that off, we can see that that is very, very shiny. Now, I don't think, because of the uniformity of the wear on Johnny's guitar, I don't think it's anything to do with actual physical contact so much. There might be 1 or 2 places where that was a thing. I actually think it's more kind of environmental and atmospheric thing that's just made it go a little bit dull over a period of time. So I don't want to abrade this and I don't want to be scratching it up, because I just think that will leave a scratch pattern that won't look good. What I intend to do is I'm just going to put a couple of coats of matte lacquer over it and see what that looks like. From there, we might have to do a few more bits and pieces, but to all intents and purposes, I think that will be enough. However, this is acrylic lacquer. I'm not convinced it's going to stick very well to this plastic, so I'm going to just give this a bit of a rough up before I do, probably just with some wire wool, because that will leave kind of very small scratch patterns which will kind of get filled in with a couple of coats of lacquer. So I'm just going to do a little bit of cleaning up with it and then we'll get some of that lacquer on. I've given that a rough up and you might be able to see that there is a lot of scratching going on there. So I'm going to clean this up, get it onto some masking, and then we'll just give it a couple of light coats of that matte lacquer. I've given the paint a good kind of rattle up. Just to make sure it's all nicely mixed. So just try and give this a couple of nice even coats. And that's gone on very gloss and looks like it has made no difference whatsoever, but I'm fairly confident that as this dries it will matte off and then we can see what kind of a finish we've got. So again, I'll leave this to dry and we can see what it looks like. It's actually got a few little bits in there that you might be able to see. I think they're just either remnants of the wire wool or just dust and stuff. This seemed to be like quite statically charged, so it was just pulling crap back onto itself, but we'll see what it looks like when it's dry. We can always give it a light flat off and another kind of couple of coats just to kind of even that stuff out a little bit. Again, I've actually left these two elements overnight to dry up, and I'm happy. Where these little inclusions got into the lacquer, have actually left it a little bit blotchy, a little bit splodgy and inconsistent, which is pretty much exactly what I was after. I didn't want like a perfect smooth finish that looked like it was brand new. I wanted something that looks like it's got a bit of age on it. And I think one of the things I can do with this is if I apply some kind of oil or something onto it inconsistently, just in places, it will kind of give it a little bit of a shiny look. I might be able to demonstrate that. This is just a little bit of lemon oil, and if I put that on and kind of wipe the excess off, it will give you a subtle difference in the finish. So I can do that in places which will make it look a lot more like a wear pattern than this is at the moment. And I think the other thing we need to bear in mind is that this in isolation, like all the other elements, might not look right, but when you pull it all together and get everything onto here again, it will really start to look like the real deal. So very happy with that. I'm not going to do anything else to that for the time being. In terms of the headstock, that's working really, really well. So far, I'm very, very happy with that. The acrylic has dried nicely. There's a tiny, tiny little bit of crinkling, but I think we can get around that. It's not too much of a problem. The reason I'm not going to do the whole of the front of the headstock in acrylic to bury this is you can't put acrylic lacquer on thick. It just never, ever dries. You have to put it on in kind of tissue thin layers and build that up over time. It would take forever. Nitro lacquer, however, you can build up quite quickly to a nice thick finish, because we need to build the nitro up higher than the thickness of the decal paper, so we can then smooth it all off to a nice consistent finish. Obviously in this instant, not quite as important in others, but we still want to make a nice job. So we're ready to put some nitro onto this. But before I do that, I just want to take a little bit. I've got 400 wet and dry here, and I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of sanding, especially around the edges of the decal. Just to take a tiny little bit of the thickness of that out before we even start putting any lacquer onto it. Which is brilliant. It just means we have to put less lacquer on, which is always a benefit. And again, with that done, just a quick little bit of masking up around the fretboard. And we can get this over to the spray booth and get some clear onto it. And to begin with, at least, I've just got some clear in my guns mixed up as normal. It's not too thin. I want to put some kind of good volume onto this. In the first instance, I'm just going to do the face of the headstock. Once I've got some decent thick coats on here and it's starting to build up past that decal, I'll then hang the neck up and give it the rest of the clear coats. But this is going to be a long job. I'm going to have to put these coats down in increments over maybe the course of 2 days. So I'm not going to film it all. I will just kind of show the first bit, and then, like I say, I'll do the rest off camera over the course of however many days it takes. And then that just leaves these three elements that we need to do a little bit of work on. However, I need to do some research to kind of establish exactly how far I need to take these. So I'm not going to do them right now. I'm going to save these for the next episode. So I'll be back in a few days' time when we can crack on with this. Hopefully get the neck finished off. I'm going to be working hard to try and get the rest of the relicking on the body done before I get back to you. So we're getting very close to the finish now, and we can pick up with that in the next episode. So until then, don't forget to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.